Last week, for the first time in the post-war era, Germany unveiled a new military strategy to significantly boost troop numbers, including active duty soldiers, reservists, and civilian employees, with the stated aim of having at least 460,000 combat-ready soldiers by 2039. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius presented the new strategy, reportedly titled Responsibility for Europe, to Germany's Defense Committee on Wednesday, with one of Germany's ruling parties describing it as a comprehensive concept to address the increased threat potential, particularly from Russia. It also follows reports earlier this month that US President Donald Trump is considering withdrawing US troops from Europe, and follows an arguably overlooked Reuters exclusive published in December 2025, suggesting the US had set a deadline for Europe to replace the US's role in NATO by 2027. So in this video, we'll explain Germany's massive rearmament, why it's happening, and whether Germany could actually replace the US in NATO. Never miss an episode and always feel in the loop by subscribing and ringing the bell. First though, some context about German military spending. In their coalition agreement, published in April last year, Germany's centre-right Christian Democratic Union, or CDU, and centre-left Social Democratic Party, or SPD, pledged to create a new, attractive military service, initially based on voluntary participation, aiming to introduce flexible service and career models, as well as increasing the proportions of women and people with immigrant backgrounds in the army. Around the same time, Chancellor Friedrich Merz passed a constitutional amendment to exclude all military spending from Germany's constitutional spending limit, the debt brake, and create a €500 billion special fund to invest in German transport infrastructure that would be needed to transfer tanks and troops to the Eastern Front if a war broke out with Russia. This decision to lift the borrowing limit, specifically for defence spending, has given Germany more fiscal room than other European countries, which are also trying to increase their military spending while facing high government debt. For context, as agreed at the 2025 NATO summit, European NATO countries are aiming to spend 3.5% of their annual budgets on defence by 2035. But right now, only 3, Poland, Latvia and Lithuania, meet this target. France plans to spend around 2.6% of its annual budget on defence by 2030, equivalent to around €76 billion, while Germany is apparently on track to reach its 3.5% defence spending target by 2029, when it will spend around €153 billion on defence. However, in terms of the scale of its policy turnaround and financial commitment, Germany is arguably undergoing the most dramatic rearmament in Europe. We can see this in Germany's ambitious goal to more than double the size of its armed forces, the Bundeswehr, by 2039. At the moment, France has the largest EU military, despite being its second most populous country after Germany, with more than 200,000 soldiers in 2024, compared to Germany's roughly 180,000, Poland's 164,000, and Italy's 162,000. Like most European forces, the Bundeswehr has shrunk significantly since the end of the Cold War. In the 1990s, Germany counted nearly 500,000 troops, but today has around 186,000. While reports last year stated that the government was aiming to expand the size of the Bundeswehr to 260,000 troops by 2035, last week Germany announced a longer-term target that's even bigger and more ambitious. At a press conference on Wednesday, SPD Defense Minister Pistorius said that the goal is to have at least 460,000 combat-ready soldiers, including both active and reserve forces, by 2039, adding that Germany will also take on more responsibility within NATO over the coming years. Germany's new military strategy also follows reports from earlier this month that US President Donald Trump was considering withdrawing US troops from Europe, or even pulling the US out of NATO. In December, a Reuters report said US officials had set a deadline of 2027 for Europe to replace the US's role in NATO, something many European officials viewed as unrealistic and also alarming, given the scale and pace of the rearmament this would require. As such, Germany's new military strategy states that Germany, as the EU's biggest economy, has a, quote, special responsibility for European security, which, whilst not naming the US specifically, seems to be mainly directed at American officials. By proving that Germany is taking European security and Trump's threats seriously, Germany seems to be lining itself up to take on a bigger leadership role within NATO, regardless of whether the US withdraws. But will Germany's massive rearmament drive succeed? Is it really possible that Germany could replace the US's role in NATO by 2027? Well, firstly, if we haven't made it clear enough, this really is an enormous undertaking. As well as ramping up defence spending, Germany is trying to increase domestic production of defence equipment, reform its slow military procurement system and speed up construction on military bases, and also increase civil resistance, i.e. greater cooperation between the Bundeswehr and local communities, as part of a whole-of-society approach, similar to that of countries like Estonia. Secondly, political disagreements could complicate some parts of Germany's rearmament. Late last year, for instance, a row erupted in the governing coalition over its draft military service bill, the Defence Service Modernisation Act, between Germany's centre-right CDU, which supported a lottery element that would call up young men for compulsory military service if the proposed voluntary scheme failed to recruit enough people, and the centre-left SPD, which opposed the lottery element over concerns it would be seen as unfair. In the end, the bill was scaled back to a purely voluntary scheme and came into force on the 1st of January. This suggests that tensions could arise again within the coalition, if not over the scale of Germany's rearmament, then perhaps over how to achieve it. Thirdly, Germany's procurement deadlines are arguably not soon enough for the government's aims. Analysts have pointed out that procuring bespoke systems, such as the Puma infantry fighting vehicle and parts for the Eurofighter Typhoon jet, have often ended up more expensive and less reliable than expected, largely due to over-optimistic planning or complications with international collaboration. For instance, the years-old Franco-German fighter jet project, the Future Combat Air System, or FCAS, has stalled due to tensions between contractors, with Merz and Macron meeting this week and asking their respective defence ministries to help get the project back on track. Even if FCAS does eventually happen, the debacle is a bad sign for European rearmament, as it's shown how national rivalries can override the urgent strategic need for intra-European collaboration. Finally, on the question of replacing the US's capabilities in NATO, well, it's highly unlikely that Europe, or Germany, will be ready for this by 2027. Time is needed to build new infrastructure, train personnel, and overcome delays in procurement. Moreover, the US Pentagon hasn't specified how it will measure Europe's progress, or even what proportion of NATO capabilities should come under European control, highlighting the uncertainty of Europe's current defence predicament. Ultimately, Germany's massive rearmament is perhaps best viewed as a serious signal, both to America and Russia, that the country is stepping up on European security. That said, it's also a genuine strategy, as European analysts and leaders increasingly fear the US might refuse to defend Europe in the event of a major war. Keeping up to date with stories like these and doing independent journalism requires a lot of constant research across all corners of the internet, and even sometimes calls for international travel. But it's not uncommon that we come across roadblocks, whether that be dubious-looking websites that claim to be safe, dodgy Wi-Fi connections in airports or cafes, or even region-locked articles. And we couldn't get by any of these barriers without a trusted VPN, so that's where NordVPN comes into play. That's because NordVPN not only offers you the fastest VPN on the planet, giving you quick and secure streaming wherever you are, but it also keeps you fully safe from all the suspicious corners of the internet. NordVPN's Threat Protection Pro feature is built to protect you by blocking dangerous ads, stopping you from entering malware hosting websites, and running through checks on everything you download. If anything is found to be infected and dangerous, the files are removed before they can harm you. But if you're rightfully concerned about your life before NordVPN, they've got you covered. Their dark web monitor will be constantly scanning the seedy underbelly of the internet even when you're not connected to a VPN, and will alert you if any of your old data or passwords have been sold. From there, NordPass will give your old passwords a huge upgrade and keep them all in one place for you to easily and safely manage. In today's world, we couldn't imagine even just existing on the internet without a VPN, so there's no better time to take your internet safety seriously. So if your online safety is as important to you as it is to us, sign up to NordVPN today. Simply click the link in the description or go to nordvpn.com/TLDR. And not only will you get a massive discount, but you also get 4 extra months totally free. There's no better time to protect yourself. So once again, that's nordvpn.com/TLDR. And it's completely risk-free with their 30-day money-back guarantee.